Now, of course, those on the left say that so-called cancel culture isn't real at all. No one's really being silenced for their views. But that's not what the evidence suggests. So this week we're going to take a closer look at what's going on. I'll start with someone in academia who's felt the full force of the cancel culture personally. William Jacobson is a clinical law professor and director of the Securities Law Clinic at Cornell University. And he's the founder of the website Legal Insurrection. Professor Jacobson, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me on.
Please explain what exactly happened to you. I think it all started with a blog post that you wrote about the protests, about some of the protests around the Black Lives Matter movement.
Yes, I've been at Cornell for 12 years. I've had a website for 10 years, and I've never seen anything like what is going on now. So in early June, I wrote 2 blog posts. One had to do with the slogan that people are chanting, hands up, don't shoot. And I'm very familiar with that because I have followed the Black Lives Matter movement since 2014 after the shooting of Michael Brown. And that was the phrase attributed to Michael Brown in Ferguson, Missouri, that he was shot when his hands were up and he was saying, don't shoot. And that became essentially the slogan and the founding narrative of the Black Lives Matter movement. Well, I knew that to be false because the Justice Department investigated it. They found that that never actually happened, that Mike Brown was shot by police because he tried to steal his gun and he didn't have his hands raised. So when I saw protesters chanting that recently, I wrote a blog post, which is something I've done before, pointing out that that is a fabrication. The hands up, don't shoot is a fabrication. And I wrote that. That created a fury by a variety of people. I also wrote.
Can you explain? Sorry, Professor. Explain what sort of people? What did they do? What happened to you?
Sure. What happened is that, combined with the second post where I criticized the rioting, led to a series of events. The first thing that happened was an alumni campaign to get me fired. That campaign was emails to the law school as well as an online petition. I then was denounced by 21 of my colleagues in a public letter, essentially accusing me of supporting institutional racism and police violence. I was denounced by the dean of the law school as my writings being not consistent with Cornell Law School values. And over a dozen student groups have organized a boycott of my course. My course is on investment disputes. And they have called on all other students to boycott my course.
Did you get any? I mean, you do enjoy academic tenure. You do enjoy the freedom that comes with it. Did you get any expressions of support at all from the institution?
I've received zero support from the institution other than a statement by the dean that because I have academic freedom and job protection, that I won't be fired. Not a single faculty member has reached out to support me and to express concern over a boycott of a professor's course. But I have received a lot of support from students who have emailed me and said that I have a lot of quiet support in the building, but everyone is afraid to speak up. And that's really the problem here, because they don't want to be targeted by people the way I've been targeted. And I completely understand that, because they don't have protection for their future careers. If accusations are made against them on the internet the way they've been made against me, they may have trouble getting a job.
Now, sorry, Professor. Yeah, sorry, go ahead. Go on.
So what this has done is it has created an atmosphere of fear and intimidation in the law school, as it has in other parts of the society. So don't think about it being, I may be the target, but I'm not really the victim here. The victim here are the students who are bullied into silence, and the culture of the law school, which now is, at least as it relates to Black Lives Matter, is completely repressive.
There are a lot of people out there who say all this talk of cancel culture is overdone. You know, you expressed your opinion, you got criticised for it, a lot of people didn't like it, they told you they didn't like it, you've still got your job, you've still got your academic position, you're still free to say what you want, you're on this programme and others, and that this whole thing is just, you know, people don't like what's going on and don't like being told that people don't agree with their views. Tell us exactly why that's wrong.
Well, it's very different. This is not merely criticism, what I've received. It's an attempt to get me fired. And the fact that it was unsuccessful so far doesn't really mitigate the maliciousness of that attempt. It's an attempt to interfere in my employment by having people boycott my course. And most important, it's an interference with students' education. Why should a student have to make a political decision whether to take my course? If they feel my course is good for their education, they shouldn't have to cross a virtual picket line. But even more important, don't focus on me. Don't focus on J.K. Rowling. Don't focus on any of the other high-profile people who can withstand this sort of pressure. It's really, this cancel culture is meant to silence the people who don't have protection, who don't have power, who don't have a platform to appear on their website or on TV. Those are the people who are really suffering, and that's really the vice and the negative aspect of cancel culture. There was a poll recently out that something like 2/3 of people in the U.S. and I think almost 80% of conservatives feel that they cannot speak their minds on issues. That's the really pernicious aspect of it. So cancel culture is a lot more than mere criticism.
Yeah, and you're right. It's not just people like you who speak up publicly and get denounced, and as you say, get an effort to fire you. But it's for every one person like you, there are many people who are silenced, who are shocked into silence by that kind of behaviour because they don't want to risk getting out there and being denounced.
That's right. So when the dean of a law school announces that we're not going to fire this professor because he has academic freedom and job security, what message does that sound to the people? Send to the people who don't have that, to the students, to the staff, to junior professors who are at risk. That's a message of saying that you are at risk, so you better keep your mouth shut on this issue. That's really what's the harm that's taking place here.
It's interesting. You said that you got quite a lot of expressions of support, quiet, private support from students, perhaps more from students, it sounded like, than from other faculty members. Is there a message in there somewhere? Is there a lesson, perhaps, that we can learn from that about how we're going to tackle cancel culture?
Yes, I've gotten zero support from faculty, a lot of support from students. And I think what we have to recognize is that you can't just view things at the surface. The people speaking out don't necessarily represent the majority of people. And therefore, we need to gear our efforts towards emboldening people who are silenced to feel comfortable in speaking up. I don't know how that's going to take place. I don't have a magic answer to that, but I think shedding a light on it, shining a light on it is the first step. But it's a real problem in institutions like in academia, which are overwhelmingly controlled by one political ideology, which is liberalism, leftism, whatever you want to call it. But it's almost a uniformity of opinion. And that's, I think, the heart of the problem. Until we diversify the ideological foundations of academia, we're not going to change this cancel culture on campus.
And Professor, you're right. It seems that it started in academia, perhaps, and spread to the media, and is now increasingly embedded in the corporate world too. I think so. It's very widespread. Thank you very much indeed, Professor, for joining us and for sharing that remarkable and very instructive story with us.